I'm going to welcome my colleague, Joel. He is part of our international employee supervising team, and he's going to kind of walk us through a high level overview of how to budget in the United States. Hi, Joel. How are you doing today?
Great, great. How are you, Courtney? And how is everybody?
I'm
Really
good.
excited
I'm
for
doing well.
today.
Yeah, I'm
Really
excited
excited for
too.
today. Yep. As an international employee supervisor, as Courtney mentioned, I'm part of one of those teams who offer that full circle of support to all our healthcare professionals throughout their stay with Healthcare Cell. My team in particular works with the healthcare professionals once they are here in the United States, and we do regular check-ins with all our healthcare professionals. And like Courtney mentioned, I would say by our experience in our team, I would say 99% of the time in our check ins, this topic about budgeting has come up. And I think that's a sign for everybody how important this topic really is. And me being an immigrant myself, this is something that I wish I had thought more about when I started my journey coming here to the US, because it would have really helped me to really plan out this new journey of mine. So, like I said, I'm really excited for today and hope to share some good insights to everyone. Okay, so a good budget to begin with starts with understanding two things: your income and your expenses. Now, your income, I would say, is the best word I can think of is pretty consistent. You know your hours work, and you probably can estimate really well what the money that's coming in every week or every month. However, in terms of your expenses, that can be variable, but at the same time, it's controllable. And controlling your expenses and really tracking your expenses, what's going to help you to know where your money is really going. Now, to track those expenses, the big buckets that you really have to think of is your wants and your needs, right? You have to distinguish what those wants are and what those needs are. That is very crucial. Like as you see in the slide, some of the ones that we've listed here is like entertainment expenses, dining out, going out, watching movies outside. Now in our lives nowadays, subscriptions is one of those things that we spend on, like very liberally sometimes, right? Getting Netflix subscriptions. When you come here to the United States, you'll hear a lot about Amazon Prime. There's just a lot of things that could occupy our expense reports, like our own personal expense reports, and we don't know that it's just going to blow up without even knowing it. On the needs part, we all know that's housing, food, and healthcare. So we need to make sure that we are aware of these two big buckets. A budget is not about restricting yourself. So it's not about like completely eradicating the want section, right? It is about making intentional choices that align with your goals. Uh, for example, if you track your spending for a month and you realize that when you dine out, you're spending like what, $300 for dining out for the whole month. And then when you look at your grocery bill, you're spending $200. Maybe that's the time for you to consider, maybe I'm going out and eating at restaurants too much. Maybe I need to think about making my own meals at home, or maybe eating at home more often than not. So just really, like I said, being intentional about these choices and knowing these two buckets and being aware of it, and not letting any of these buckets get out of control. Now, there's a lot of budgeting methods out there. Like, just if you google budgeting methods, you probably see a lot of ideas. Now we're going to share one simple method right here. It's called the 50-30-20 budgeting method. Now, it is not an end all be all budgeting method. Like I said, you'll find a lot of other methods out there, but this approach is pretty simple. It's also pretty flexible. It's one of the easiest and I would say very effective method to budget your money. So with this approach, you try to divide your income into three categories. So the biggest part is, of course, the needs part, right? We'll say that's around half of your money goes to your needs, and your needs include rent, of course, groceries, utilities, transportation, and insurance. Uh, Rent, of course, that's for housing. Groceries for your daily lifestyle. Utilities is for electricity, water, and maybe this is something new for some of you, but gas is also part of utilities because in some areas you need gas to heat your home. So, and also transportation. So may it be public transportation or may it be your uh, monthly contribution to your car loan. So that's for your needs. 30% we say it goes to your wants, which like I mentioned a while ago, this has to do with, eating out in restaurants, going out for movies, right? Uh, Going out on a 3-day holiday, on a long weekend. Those are all wants. And some of your hobbies as well. I'm pretty sure like all of you have your own personal hobbies. I myself, I do a lot of sports, so membership fees in some of the clubs is one of my entertainment expenses. So try to limit that to around 30%. And then the last part is has to do with 20 with the financial goals. So financial goals has to do about savings, emergency funds, and retirement contributions. Savings is really important, of course. We all want that that money that's set aside if knock on wood something unintended happens. uh, and then there's also retirement, which is planning for the future. So really focus on these three buckets. Like I said, it's pretty simple. It covers in general the big buckets in your daily life here in the US. It's also very flexible. So these are like think of it as like levers that you can adjust, right? 50 can be 45, right? Or 55. 30 can be 25 or 35. So there's like I said, there's a lot of flexibility with this method. So other than this one, in analyzing your budgeting, the next thing we're discussing are actually about the categories of
And
uh,
Joel, I just want to
of your
interject
budget.
really quick.
Yeah.
I think a good reminder too, just going over this. I know when speaking with our candidates, I know rent and utilities might be paid differently in different areas of the
Mhm.
world. So something really good to keep in mind when you're looking at this 50, 30, 20 budgeting method is your rent and your utilities. So under that 50% bucket, those are going to be monthly expenses. So in the US, your rent and your utilities are going to be paid monthly. Again, I know it might be paid differently where you're currently living. So that's also a good factor to keep in mind when you're starting to think about your budgeting method that you're going to use once you're over in the United States. And just a reminder too, make sure that you are submitting questions if you have any questions about any of the information that Joel's covering today. Again, since we have Joel joining us, we want to be able to utilize him and answer those questions if you do have them. So make sure you're dropping them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them either throughout Joel's presentation, or we can always do a live Q&A with Joel at the end. All right, back to you, Joel.
That's a great input, Courtney, because one of the things that I didn't touch on, which you mentioned, is about the frequency of these expenses, right? Sometimes the rent bill comes in monthly, and sometimes it comes at a different date than your utility bill. I think that emphasizes even more why we need to budget and why we need to plan. Because if we don't
Right,
have a budget and a plan, when this bill comes up and you didn't plan for it, you'll get surprised. Oh no, I don't have money to pay for my electricity, or like
right.
I don't have money to pay for my insurance. So it is really imperative, to have that plan, to have that regular plan. So then like, okay, I have this budget for this item, and then it comes like, let's say on the 20th of the month, right? So at least you're not surprised by any and all like expenses that come through your table. So
Right.
really great,
Yeah.
great, great input, Courtney.
Thanks, Joel.
All right. So, one of the things that I wanted to discuss as well are the major budgeting categories. Okay. So, we talked about bucketing your expenses in terms of needs and wants. Another way to look at your expenses is through these four big buckets. Okay. So, I'm going to go through it one by one. The first thing is about fixed expenses. These are, I would say, the essential costs that are very consistent. They basically stay the same, right? And like I said, these are really essential. So if you're gonna prioritize all your expenses that money needs to go to a certain bucket, then this is the bucket that I would recommend. So fixed expenses has to do with rent or mortgage, Uh, Insurance, childcare or education costs if you have childcare, or if you have dependents coming with you, and childcare is important as well. And then loan payments, most often than not, is for your car payments. Now, I mentioned something about insurance. I haven't mentioned this yet, but one of the things for me personally that was eye opening was the insurance costs. I think when you come here to the United States, you will realize very quickly that insurance is sort of very essential part of our lives. Like healthcare insurance, you go to a doctor, they would need your insurance. You get a car, you can't drive a car without a car insurance. So insurance is everywhere. So in that sense, it becomes really essential to plan for that. So there are healthcare insurance costs. There will be car insurance costs. When you rent, there will be renters insurance costs. So make sure to research that on your own. There's a lot of information about that. Just when you well, over the internet, and just make sure that you plan those out, because those are, like I said, very consistent expenses, but essential ones that you have to plan for. The second ones are also necessities, but they're much more variable. So these are utilities, groceries, and also transportation. Now, utilities we've already talked about. It's electricity, water, and gas. Okay, don't forget about gas, especially if you're going to a cold weather state. So utilities that can vary depending on where you are in the country, right? If you're further down south where it gets really hot in the summer, then you'll spend a lot on air conditioning. If you're like on the northern part of the country, you would need a lot of heating, which then would require a lot of gas expenses. So uh, just be aware of that when you try to estimate your utilities expenses. Groceries, of course, will differ from place to place. Uh, it depends on availability. It depends on where you are in the states, and then transportation will depend, of course, on your choices in terms of transportation. Some of the healthcare professionals that I've been with, they basically do three things. They have their own car. They either do 100% using their car. They can do 100% doing public transportation, or they can do mixed. So depending on your choices, your transportation costs will also vary, and you have to include as well, parking costs, if that's, if you're in a city, or if you're in a location that expense pretty much very is very significant. And there's also gas, of course, for transportation. So those two are the big ones. And then later, on the third bucket is about discretionary spending. So we're talking about wants again, right? At the very beginning. So discretionary spending, from the word itself, it's upon your discretion if you want to spend on these items. So dining out, subscriptions, shopping for clothes, things like that. So things that I would say not very essential, but it could be essential depending on your life situation. So I did get a few questions in terms of like the cost of living by person or by family. Now, unfortunately, I can't really answer that, specifically by person or by family, because there's a lot of variabilities by location, right? So depending on where you are, which part of the country you are in, it will determine your rent. It will determine, like I said, your utilities. uh, if you have dependents, if you have kids, it will, depending on where you are, it will determine how much you will spend for childcare. It will determine how much you spend on education. So there are also choices with regards to children in terms of like, do you want them to do extracurricular activities within the school or outside the school? There's just a lot of variables. I guess the best answer I could give to all of you in terms of like the specifics is when you have ideas on where you want to go to in the US, you have your assignee with you. It could be your IPA, or even your IES. Talk to them about it. Again, we talk about that full circle of support. You can talk to your assignee about that specific location, and you can discuss specifically about that location, that facility, or that, even that specific city or state, on how all these items that I'm talking about would look like, in terms of like your how your expenses would look like. So uh, that's really, I think, the best course of action for all, for any of you that aren't here in the United States. There's a lot of options, but you can narrow it down, and your assignee can help you out with it. All right. The last thing, and very important as well, is, of course, your savings and emergency fund. So, emergency fund, like I said, when I started here in the US, budgeting wasn't one of the things that I'm used to doing. And I'm really guilty of this. Didn't have any emergency funds in my budgeting profile, and that, unfortunately, it came to bite me in certain cases. When something untoward happened that I didn't expect, I didn't have money set aside to, it could be like a healthcare issue, right? It could be a work issue, right? That you need money on. So just make sure to set aside emergency fund savings. Normally, it's advisable to have like uh, 3 to 6 months worth of emergency funds set aside. So if, for example, you usually spend, for example, like $2,000 a month for expenses, if you can set aside 3 months worth. So two times three, that's 6,000 worth of money that you don't touch, and you will only touch during emergency situations. That's ideal. So again, it would depend on your life situation, right? If you have a bigger family, maybe you would need a bigger emergency fund. If you have a family member that maybe has, I had this family member who had I had this whole healthcare professional who had a family member who had a medical issue. So, that being the case, she really made sure that she had savings set aside for this family member. So it really depends on your uh, personal situation. So uh, I know I didn't speak of like very specific dollar terms in these buckets, but I hope it's helpful just in terms of like knowing these categories, knowing these items, because I think that's the first step, right? Like if you come in here in the US and you don't even think about insurance, you'll be caught by surprise of how much you have to spend for insurance, right? You come in here and you don't think about childcare, and you have a toddler, for example, then you'll be caught by surprise. So I hope at the minimum, at least puts it in your radar, and gives you time to research as well. And like I said, go to your assignee, and your assignee will really help you dig deeper in these specific expense categories. Okay, so a couple more things that I want to talk about in terms of your financial planning as you prepare to come here to the U.S. And this part, I would say, is one of those. I hate to use the word neglected, but I would say things that most of the healthcare professionals sometimes forget to think about as they prepare for their move here to the U.S. Now, when you come here to the US, there's a gap between the time that you arrive in the US and the time that you actually start. Unfortunately, in my many years experience here in healthcare cell, the fastest I've seen someone to start working from the time they arrive is, I would say, 2 weeks. But I have seen people have to wait 3 months before they're able to start work, and that's for a number of reasons that they can start. A lot of it has to do with credentialing and certification. Your As a healthcare professional, your profession is highly regulated here in the US. So there's a lot of like certification requirements that needed for you to start. So in that time frame that you can't work, right? You have to plan for that because there's not no money coming in. So in this segment, we want to let you know how much you want to save up before you even come here to the US. Okay, so these are just guideline amounts, but I'll divide it into two segments, two buckets. One are individuals without independence, so you're coming here on your own here in the US. We would suggest around 2,500 or 2,500 to around $3,000 worth of savings, cash in hand that you have saved up for a period of a month of wait. So if you are gonna wait a month before you start, then you probably need this much amount of money. Now, of course, if you get an indication from your assignee, right, that oh, you're probably gonna wait 2 months or 3 months, then adjust accordingly, right? So maybe you gotta bump that amount even more, right? So again, your the one that's working with you, your assignee, it could be your IPA or IDA, is very key in this matter. Always communicate with them, especially when you're about to come here to the US, in terms of like how much you have to wait before you start, how long is it going to take for you to get licensed or get certified in your particular state, so you know the time frame. Okay, and then the other bucket is if you have dependents with you. So if you have dependents with you, of course, that number goes up, right? In our experience, you would need around 4,000 to $6,000 for a month wait. So again, same thing. If you have any indication from your assignee or from your research about your state or your state licensure that it would take longer, then adjust it accordingly. One thing I have to mention though is if you're bringing money, and money can be in any form. It can be cash, it can be checks or whatever. You We advise to have it under 10,000, because anything under 10,000, you might run into issues in the border. There are laws that talks about bringing money more than $10,000. So just make sure you're aware of that. But like I said, it's very important to prepare for that gap between the time you arrive here in the U.S. and the time you work. So, and the last thing that I wanted to discuss is about no one of the last things I want to discuss is the cost of living by region. There are differences, like I mentioned already, in terms of the cost of living per depending on the location that you're going. So these are two locations that we have made as an example today. You can see here, first is Des Moines, Iowa, and the other one is Kearney, Nebraska. The the reason why we put these two as an example for today is they're very different areas. Okay, Des Moines, Iowa is quite urban. There's more, I would say, public transportation options. Still not many, but a lot more than Kearney, Nebraska. Okay. We have facilities that we're partnered with in these locations. So these can be your options. But as you can see, I won't go each and every one of these items anymore, but you can see there's a stark difference, right? In terms of the expenses, the average expenses for these two areas. It can range from like a $50 difference to a couple of $100 difference, right? For each item. So like I said, when I was discussing about the big buckets of expenses, make sure to discuss this with your IDAs and your IPAs, because they will be able to tell you like these specific amounts. If you were planning already to go to Des Moines, then this is great information for you all. Uh, and from here, like I said, you can plan out like, okay, how far do I need to live from my facility? Like what's the cost of the car that I need to purchase, right? Because that would determine my monthly car payments, right? What's my budget for housing, right? Do I live in a house that's close to the facility or far from the facility? Because that would determine my transportation costs, right? Do I get a big car or a small car? Because a big car might cost more in insurance, right? So these are some of the guidelines that you will think of. But like I said, the location matters. Like if you go to Kearney, Nebraska, it could be cheaper, right? But you also have to think about the facility that you're going, right? Uh, Schools in your location. So there's a lot of considerations, but just know that there's very big differences depending on which location you're wanting to go to. All right. So I want to end with some practical ways to save money and to cut costs. I know there's a lot of like information there that you saw, like in terms of just the buckets of expenses that you're going to spend on when you come here to the US. But here are some practical ways to help you out to cut those costs. So one thing is, take a look at your subscriptions, and if you have subscriptions that you're not using, feel free to cancel them. right? We're in a world wherein, the media that we consume can come from different sources, and each of those sources sometimes require subscriptions, right? We pay a couple of bucks to Disney, for example. We pay a couple of bucks to Netflix, and then we don't realize it. Those things add up. So make sure you know all of your subscriptions that you pay for, and cancel those that you're not using. Okay. The second thing, and it's quite, I would say, very popular here in the United States. One thing that I was not also used to when I came here is rewards programs. So make sure, when you're shopping, even when you're grocery shopping, a lot of the grocery stores here, or a lot of the shops here in the US, have their own reward programs. So if you're loyal to certain stores, you'll get rewards for that. You'll get cash back for that. So take advantage of those. So these are things, like I said, that we take for granted because it didn't exist. For example, for me, when in back in my home country. So make sure to take advantage of these reward programs. Uh, Always compare like utility providers. The good thing with here in the U.S., you have options in terms of utilities. So in depending on which area you're in, you can compare the cost, whether it's for gas, electricity, for water, whatever it is, for trash collection. You can compare them. It's as if you're comparing like airline prices. It's that way of shopping. So that's a good part of it. So choose what's most appropriate for you, what you need, and also what saves you money. All right. The two other things, the fourth thing is actually a big savings item for me. Try to prep your meals at home. One of the biggest expenses that I have personally is eating out and going out and dining in restaurants. So if you could, spend time, cook at home, bring your lunch with you when you go to work, that's a big cost savings. And also similar if you have dependents, if you have kids, although some schools would have free lunches depending on which location you're going to, but the meal prepping really helps a lot. And then last thing, automate your savings. Sometimes we get caught up, paying this bill, this bill, and we forgot about, oh my goodness, I used up all my money and I didn't save anything. Like if you can really uh, set the discipline of, okay, I'm going to set aside like what, 5%, or let's say as small as $100, right? But you make it consistent and you have a discipline to do that, then that would help you in the long run. And you'll realize, oh my goodness, I have money that I've set aside and I don't have to worry about uh, any emergent events that happen in the future. So uh, I hope this helps out, as you plan for your arrival, or your you coming here to the US. Like I said, number one is really take control of your budget. The last thing you want to happen for you is, you just write checks, you spend money here and there, and it gets out of control. Okay, make sure to take control of your budget. Be intentional about it. List it. If you have to create a spreadsheet. Okay, I'm divulging a little bit about what I do personally, but if you have to create your own spreadsheet or write it down in paper, that would be great. Second thing is, like a big item is really preparing for the time that you will be not at work when you come here to the US. Make sure to plan for that. While you're not here in the US, make sure to plan for that. And then last thing I want to end with, everything that I told you about, these are things that you can discuss, like I said, with your current assignee. Whether you were with an IPA or an IDA or with an IES, that person can help you out in all these items. They can, like I said, dig deeper into each of these buckets and tell you specific and answer like specific questions that you have in terms of like, how much do I spend for my childcare? How much do I spend for transportation for the specific location? So make sure to communicate with them, and we'll gladly support you in all of these. So. Thank you for this time. And Courtney, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Joel. You answered a lot of the questions that were coming into the chat with all the information that you covered in this segment on budgeting. We did get a question in from Gabriel about if there's a website where they can
Mhm,
use to stimulate the costs according to the state that they're going to. And I thought
mhm.
that this was an interesting question, and a good tool that they might be able to use. Do you want to elaborate if like what tools we provide to our nurses in order to help them kind of plan for the cost according to the state that they're going to?
Yeah, there are websites. There's actually several. The names are skipping my mind right now. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but your assignee will know exactly what those websites are. But they can be as specific as by state and by city. So that's something that basically rest assured that that information is out there. It's not information that's not readily available. So make sure to just like I said, connect with your assignee and mention the cities that you're looking at, and then again mention your life situation, and based on like what we talked about already in terms of like the big buckets, mention that to your assignee. Okay, this is what's important to me. I need childcare for my kids. I need I'm not really a good driver. I want to do public transportation. So mention those big items for you, like important items to you, and you can work together using these tools that your assignee has to create I would say, a more personalized budget for your situation.
And with these websites too, you can typically put in your income and it'll automate and show you the average cost of what rent would be in that city or
Yep.
state, what the average utility cost, transportation, groceries, gas. So it is definitely helpful when you're planning your move, depending on what city you're ending up in. We also had a really good question from Mary, and it seemed like a popular one because it did receive a lot of reactions to it as well. And I think this is insurance with my family members during the 3 years of contract.
Courtney, can you say that last part again? You cut off a little bit.
Yeah. Mary had asked, will I be given medical insurance together with my family members during the 3 years of my contract?
That's a great question, Mary. Like I said, in the buckets of expenses, health insurance is one of those big buckets. Now we are all fortunate that one of the long list of benefits that we have here in healthcare sale is a very comprehensive health insurance plan. So again, the specifics of that you can discuss with your assignee, but we have coverage in terms of like our health insurance, and it's something that you know that information you can get for your assignee, and you can really estimate like how your dependents can be covered. And yeah, it's wonderful. I had healthcare professionals who you know have have kids, have healthcare professionals have even like given birth here in the United States. So a lot of those life circumstances have been covered under our benefits. So we'll take care of you in that regard.
Yeah. And, again, as part of our full circle of support, Joel's team really wants to help you with that transition. And that means explaining, the insurance that is going to be provided to you and your family members and the options that you have when it comes time to enrolling in your benefits.
Mhm.
All right. And then we did have a last question, which is just a good reminder. I'm glad that you asked, Gloria, if there will be a recorded version of this meeting made available to you. And as always, these are recorded and they will be sent out. So in case you joined late, you're not able to stay for the full broadcast, or maybe it just seems like a lot of information and you want to be able to watch it again, you will get a recorded version sent out to you. So not to worry. If you need to watch it again, you'll be able to use that link. Well, thank you so much, Joel. This was so informative. I think I learned a thing or two about budgeting, and I might go back to my budgeting plan and reevaluate it. So hopefully our audience was able to learn just as much, if not more than I did. But I appreciate you taking the time to go over a budgeting plan with everyone that's online today. Thanks again.
You're welcome.